Hello, everyone. Great to be live with you. Well, fires have been raging around the world from Europe to America, and the media has been abuzz about, what's the cause of this fire? And they're trying to make sure that it's not arson, that it is climate change. But they are now being busted for their lies. And we're going to get into exactly what happened. But first, I want to show you this footage of what may be the start of the Maui wildfire. This is my first time seeing this footage. Maybe you've seen it. It was caught on surveillance video. A giant flash. Take a look.
There's a flash, and I think that's when a tree's falling on a power line. The power goes out, our generator kicks in, the camera comes back online, and then the forest is on fire. I grabbed 2 fire extinguishers, and we put out the fire just on like the edge of the property here, and then basically I didn't want that happening again, so ran back inside, got more fire extinguishers, garden hoses, just whatever I could find, the closest things, and we went out and just kind of contained it the best we could.
This surveillance footage is so strange to me because you see the flash for 2 seconds. It looks like a flash because it gets cut off, and it may not be a flash. We don't know how long it was illuminated like that because it cuts right off and cuts to a clip where the camera is now pointed down. Did the camera randomly fall at that time, or did someone move it away from the flash? We see someone pan it back up. The camera gets moved back up to point in the direction where the so-called flash happened. And the time, there's a missing just over 3 minutes there in the surveillance footage. 3 minutes are cut out. Now, the man narrating says that the power cut out, and that may have been the cause of the camera cutting out. But why was the camera now pointing down and away from the source of that light? Take a look again.
There's a flash, and I think that's when a tree's falling on a power line. The power goes out, our generator kicks in, the camera comes back online, and then the forest is on fire.
Normally people don't sit next to surveillance cameras and move them right back up in 3 minutes if they fell on their own. So did someone move it away for some reason and then back? It's just really bizarre footage of something that apparently happened at the Maui Bird Conservation Center. And I'll show you where that is on a map. It is in the general area of where the media is reporting the first fire started. You can see kind of in the center of the island there. That's where that surveillance footage caught a giant so-called flash in the woods. Again, it only looks like a flash because it cuts out after 2 seconds of the forest illuminating. How long did it stay that illuminated? I don't know, but because it cuts out. Where's the missing 3 minutes? Anyway, this is very far from Lahaina. Lahaina is right here, Lahaina is getting all the media coverage. But there were about 4, as I've been reading media reports, there were 4 different fires on Maui that all started around the same time. And apparently the first one was where we saw that flash. Did embers carried by that 60-mile-per-hour wind cause the fire to jump to different locations? Media reports are speculating that flash was actually a tree falling on a power line, causing it to kind of spark up. And just in the past day, apparently media is reporting that the power company there on the island has taken responsibility for starting the fire, due to that. But they're also being blamed for not shutting off some of their power lines when it was a high risk of a fire starting in that way. Checking your comments here real quick. Thanks for joining me live. Okay, before we get into the media being busted for their lies about the fire, real quick shout out to the sponsor of my coverage. A surging national debt is bullish for gold. The debt ceiling drama ended with nominal budget cuts and a shiny new credit card with no limit for the federal government. A Bank of America senior analyst recently told Wall Street Journal, big stock market rally to be followed by a big collapse. Are you prepared to protect your retirement savings for at least another year of the current administration? The time for gold is here. Demand is soaring. Let National Gold Group show you the options for investing in precious metals like gold and silver in your retirement account for direct delivery. Take advantage of the best deal in precious metals. Mention my channel, Ivory Hecker. Pay no fees when you roll over your IRA and invest your IRA or 401k in physical gold and silver. Qualified accounts will receive their lifetime fee waiver on rollovers through 2023. Call 888-617-5927, 888-617-5927. That number is down in my description. Get a free investor guide down there as well. National Gold Group is a Consumer Affairs top-rated gold IRA dealer. 888-617-5927. Add the power of gold to your portfolio. There's always a risk of loss, and past performance is not indicative of future results. That's the disclaimer. Okay, with that being said, guys, you're asking about directed energy weapons, and the fact checkers want to make sure you know that that is a false story. Even though media is reporting we don't know for sure what caused the fire, but it's for sure not directed energy weapons, they're saying. Now, that big flash could be a directed energy weapon. I don't know if that's going to get me kicked off YouTube for saying that, but when we're talking about lasers, that our U.S. military says they've developed this technology, and you may have seen footage that several people have posted now of a long interview that CBS News did, apparently back in 2013, with an expert on this, saying, yes, we in the government have indeed created this technology to basically use lasers, and not only against international enemies, but also for weather. So it is a real thing, but the mainstream media's fact checkers are saying, please look the other way, ignore that. That was a massive flash in the woods. And when I hang up this live stream, you can replay it and kind of go through it click second by second, like I did. And it's just huge. It looks a little bit too big for what would be a tree falling on a power line. It was really intense. And then you can see how it cuts out after 2 seconds and then comes back with the camera being pointed another direction. Just very bizarre. So BBC News says Hawaii wildfires, directed energy weapon and other false claims go viral. Right there, before anyone knew what was the actual cause, they were saying that is a false claim. PolitiFact saying claims connected to arsonists. Now, this is in regards to Canada, because we're going to talk about Canada, Greece. PolitiFact wants to make sure that you know that arsonists are not responsible for the wildfires, even though at least two arsonists were responsible for wildfire attempts that were earlier this year. Apparently in May, one woman was arrested. You can Google this. It's all over the Canada news. She started a fire in the woods with flames reaching like 25 feet, and apparently was put out before it spread too far, but she was charged with arson. And then another man was arrested this year for starting a wildfire last year. Wildfires are historically started by arsonists in Canada. I'm not saying everyone is, but arson is a cause of wildfires quite recently. Yet Canadian news and American news, PolitiFact, they want to make sure that you know that this time, these big ones are not arson. They're definitely climate change. Okay, how do we know that for sure? I have these headlines: charges laid in series of intentionally set Alberta wildfires and residential arsons from the Global News. And then woman arrested for intentionally setting fires in the woods near Snook, British Columbia, police say. Just today, in speaking of Greece, apparently Greece has bad wildfires right now. CNN is reporting it's a losing battle to save the lungs of Athens as wildfires grip Greece. Quote, now it is the home of a raging battle as the emergency services try to repel more than 200 wildfires in Greece since Monday alone. CNN is reporting today 200 wildfires since Monday, which is yesterday. What? This article right here by CNN claims that there were 200 wildfires in Greece just since yesterday and that it is a losing battle. Schellenberger, author and independent journalist, says that the media, especially CNN, has egg on their face for blatant lies. He's the one putting the media on blast, saying, look, you guys lied. You straight up lied about climate change being the cause of these fires when 160 people have now been arrested for arson in Greece. So let's go over this. Let's look at what he's breaking down. He shows this article from CNN, this was actually published in 2021. Greece actually had bad wildfires 2 years ago as well. And this article says why wildfires happen, debunking the myth that arson is to blame more than climate change. And then it talks about escalating conditions in our climate. Maybe it gets drier, there's more wind, and it preps the climate for the chance that a spark hits something, then it's going to be a worse fire than it would have been if there weren't. Climate change is the conspiracy theory that CNN is putting out. But then they also talk about, they say here, quote, people are responsible for starting many of the most devastating wildfires. Arsonists might be looking to cause damage, but others have deliberately started fires too. This is towards the end of the CNN article. They actually get into a lot of truth. And I noticed this with a lot of mainstream news articles. And from being in newsrooms myself, I'm assuming what's happening here is that the boss, the assignment editor, is saying, hey, you're assigned to go cover how climate change is the actual cause of these fires. Please make this story happen. And the journalist goes out, interviews people, and the experts are actually saying the opposite. They're saying, yeah, arson is a cause a lot of times, and also changes in land use. And they're explaining all these practical causes of fire, and there's not really any actual evidence that climate change is the cause. And so the journalist has to, they're still assigned to say that climate change was the cause. They don't want to disappoint their boss. So they kind of bury the truth towards the end. And then they summarize it saying it really is climate change though, guys. Anyway, she's this author, Ivana, she's quoting, Smith said that recent changes in land management play a big role in some areas where fire has always been part of the natural cycle. For example, in the U.S. West, for thousands of years, that land was probably being managed by the traditional owners. The indigenous population using fire has always been part of that landscape. Native Americans used to intentionally set fires so that a big one wouldn't occur. If you regularly burn an area, then the fires are always smaller and more containable. But it says, this same article says, but those practices have been abandoned over the last 150 years or so. And that has led to changes in the amount of fuel that's on the ground. The ecosystem gets a bit more biomass and a bit more fuel heavy. And then when you do have these fires, they tend to be more destructive because there's more stuff to burn. So they're talking about actual practical causes of worse fires here that have nothing to do with so-called climate change. Yet CNN goes on to say the fact that climate change is making wildfires more ferocious doesn't mean people aren't to blame. The opposite is true. The IPCC has concluded that it's now unequivocal that humans have caused the climate crisis in the first place. So, as fires continue to burn across large swaths of the world, people have to face up to the truth. Wildfires are made worse by the climate crisis. The climate crisis was caused by people. And so there's their persuasive conclusion in this CNN article, which is not very persuasive to me because the actual details they're explaining are all, related to land use, arson, and then they randomly say the climate crisis, which apparently is CO2 changes, is related to fire. So anyway, they're saying the CNN was saying, look, guys, it's not arson, it is climate change. But you fast forward 2 years, and then you have this article where the same Greece has just 160 arsonists have been arrested. Police in Greece are saying since the start of this year, 160 arsonists have been arrested for all of these fires that have been happening this year in Greece. And so 160 is a lot of arsonists. And it really just does not line up with this idea that climate change is the cause of the fire. I get how if it is a drier season and a fire does start, the fire is going to be worse than what it was if it was a wetter season. And people who believe in climate change are trying to reason that areas that are currently dry are dry because of climate change. The truth is that throughout the millennia, there's always been droughts. There's been rainy, flood seasons. There's been times of drought. Even way back in the Bible, they were talking about droughts and floods. I mean, it always happens. And so Schellenberger is also, he's putting that on blast as he talks about not only the fact that the media has been lying about climate change being the cause when 160 arsonists have been arrested, but they've also lied historically about all the climate stuff. He says they lied about the Great Barrier Reef, and he put these two screenshots together. CNN saying global warming is killing the Great Barrier Reef in 2018, but then in 2022 they say parts of the Great Barrier Reef record highest amount of coral in 36 years. So doesn't sound like it's dying. It's actually bigger than ever. And then he shows this. He says they lied about disasters. They're actually going down. He has this graph of global weather and climate disasters, year 2000 through 2021, showing a very slight decline in climate disasters and weather in the past 20 plus years. So if these graphs are correct, it doesn't make sense. He has one on landfalling U.S. hurricanes. They've declined 1900 to 2020. There's been a decline. Hurricanes have always been coming through. Actually, did you guys know that the deadliest wildfires in America actually happened in the 1800s? So I guess were we emitting more CO2 in 1870? And then we took a break and now we're back to it, and that's why we're having fires again. Or maybe bad fires happen every so often. History.com, the 5 deadliest wildfires in America. Number 1 was the Peshtigo Fire and the Great Fires of 1871. For 3 days in October of 1871, the entire upper Midwest of the United States was a raging inferno. 4 of the worst fires in American history, known collectively as the Great Fires of 1871, burned simultaneously in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Illinois. Among them was the legendary Great Chicago Fire that killed an estimated 300 people, charring 17,500 buildings and left 100,000 people homeless. Much, much worse than Hawaii. Meanwhile, and that was just part of it. Meanwhile, 3 other wildfires claimed more than 500 lives in Michigan. But the deadliest of the Great Fires was the Peshtigo Fire that ripped through the rural Wisconsin logging town of Peshtigo on the night of October 8th, 1871. The fast-moving fire killed 800 residents in Peshtigo alone and claimed as many as 2,400 total victims, making it the deadliest fire in recorded North American history. This Wisconsin fire killed 2,400 people, burning about the same time as the deadly Chicago fire, which was less deadly. And then in 1918, there was another horrible fire in Minnesota. It was worse than the Hawaii fire. You know, maybe we had a spike in CO2 emissions and it was climate change in 1918. But maybe bad fires happen from time to time. The second deadliest fire in North America, it says, also struck the upper Midwest nearly 50 years after the Great Fire of 1871. The conditions in 1918 were nearly the same. In fact, it was the driest October in 48 years. Exactly. Sometimes we have very dry years. 1918 was very dry. 1871 was very dry. And I know here in Houston, Texas, 2023 is very dry. We have barely had a drop of rain in 3 months here in Houston. It's very strange. But this happens from time to time. We can't randomly start saying it's climate change when we look at history. History.com saying, it was a spark from a passing train that ignited a wildfire outside of the small town of Cloquet, Minnesota. The fire smoldered for several days until October 12th, when winds measuring as high as 76 miles per hour fanned the previously tame wildfire into a raging killer. The Cloquet fire fully consumed the towns of Cloquet, Moose Lake, and Kettle River before bearing down on the larger city of Duluth. More than 1,000 people lost their lives in the wildfire. 38 communities were destroyed and 250,000 acres burned. Wow. History.com saying that the Maui wildfire of this year is estimated to be the 3rd deadliest wildfire in history. So there you go. I mean, just looking at history, climate change doesn't make sense. We don't have a lot of evidence for climate change. It is a massive conspiracy theory. And, you know, I think it's a dangerous conspiracy theory, because if we, you know, believe that the only solution to so-called climate change is to give away our freedoms to a global government to, you know, reduce our use of modern technology that might emit CO2, or even our ability to eat meat, because cows contribute methane to the atmosphere. It's really giving away a lot of our liberty and really reducing our freedom. And it's a dangerous slippery slope. So I think we should be really cautious about this climate change theory that's just being thrown around in the media with little evidence. Bad weather events happen from time to time. Okay, I have a super chat. Thank you so much, Kevin, for the super chat. Means a lot. You said you saw and met Ivory 2.0, April Moss. at a 2-day event in Michigan nearly 3 weeks ago where she was co-emceeing. She was phenomenal, an absolute sweetheart. Wish you could have been there as well. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, April Moss is a friend of mine. She is wonderful. I love her so much. And she's been on my show, I've been on her show, and we are dear friends since we both called out the mainstream media on TV for fitting our jobs 1 week apart. Checking your comments. Ironhead says, we don't need to be giving away any freedoms. They are taking them away daily. Yeah. So we got to keep an eye on World Health Organization and the United Nations. They are having a big high-level meeting is the official name of it. It's a high-level meeting on, they're going to be focusing on health, but climate is a big part of their focus. And they're trying to hit their 2030 markers. Like they want to be on track for more government control, less individual liberty by 2030, because their theory is that if they can control each individual's daily life, that it will improve the climate and improve individual health. And they're going to be talking about this at a 3-day event in New York called a high-level meeting, September 20th. We got to look out for that. The European Union has just cracked down on social media companies doing an escalated control of what gets out to the public. So censorship is increasing. Of course, we've got this so-called triple-demic that's now being hyped, even though cases are, very low. And the truth is that illnesses happen every year. And the truth is that the media always does a little freak out about getting sick when we go back to school. But this time there's a different flavor to it because we're already seeing mask mandates. Why are there randomly mandates for masks in certain areas simultaneously with health experts on TV across America saying, yeah, that's my boyfriend's dog, you just saw walk through, saying there could be a triple-demic. So, let's put masks on right away and not just recommend them, but force you. So that's the kind of scary that this is all happening together at the same time. So we just got to be really alert to it and make sure, people need to not just roll over and take it, but actually stand up for their individual liberty, because we've seen quite a few examples of where if enough people speak up loud enough and say, I'm not putting up with this, then those trying to enact the mandates typically back off, actually. So hopefully we can keep our individual liberty in a free press. The goal of the free press in a free society is actually to make sure that they are alerting people to what's really happening so that the individuals can stay free. And I think a lot of my former colleagues in the mainstream media have forgotten that that's actually their job, is to alert people to what's taking away their freedom and what's keeping their freedom. Instead, they are the mouthpiece for the government who wants to take away their freedom. And media outlets are straight up saying, put your mask back on. Go get that new pharmaceutical that's rolling out in September. Just do it. And you might get, you might get arrested if you don't. Ever since 2020, I've been very disappointed in the corporate media, who is no longer about keeping people free. In journalism school, Syracuse University, Newhouse, we are taught that it's literally The free press is about the keeping the people free. That's why we're a watchdog on the government who tries to intrude into people's free lives. So I hope that my former colleagues remember that and get back to that goal. That's the one agenda of Free Press members. That's my one bias. Not for a certain candidate, but for your individual liberty. And that's what I'm looking out for every day. And I wish more media members would. Oh, thank you for the super chat. Inflation situation. You said, in light of all the censorship talk, I feel like I may be running out of time to support your work. So enjoy. Well, I really appreciate it so much. Yeah. I've definitely been subjected to a lot of censorship. It's been very hard to try to cover what's actually happening to keep people free without being censored. Instagram is launching a big attack against me. I just posted about it in the past day. Instagram is flagging basically all of my posts now, saying that they're content monetization violations. Anything from, I posted some pictures with my aunts and uncles at a family reunion. They flagged that as a monetization violation. Picture with my boyfriend, monetization violation. Songwriting in Nashville, in addition to all my news coverage, and obviously it's the news coverage that first piqued in Instagram's interest, that, I might be someone that their buddies at the White House won't like. And it's been exposed. The emails have been released thanks to lawsuits and leaks showing that the White House has been telling Meta and the former owners of Twitter what to get rid of. And they have been topics that I have covered, specifically, mostly about their beloved new pharmaceutical. And so it appears that once an Instagram account gets a certain amount of posts flagged, then they just, like, an all-out attack on you happens. Like, we see what you're doing and how you're trying to use other words to avoid the bots detecting you. So we're just going to start flagging everything. And that appears to be what's happening to my Instagram. So all my social media is down in my description if you guys want to follow my other social media accounts in case my Instagram gets taken down. These are bad times, and the people in the mainstream media with their blinders on don't realize the extent of the censorship because it's not happening to them. Before I left Fox, none of my posts would get censored because Fox kept me in lockstep with the narrative. And I didn't fully realize that them just saying, oh, we don't have time to cover that angle, was actually their way of keeping me away from covering certain things. And had I covered that and posted on Instagram, Instagram would have gotten rid of it. So Fox, Instagram, everybody has been on this little lockstep. And so reporters who haven't been enlightened like I was in 2020 when I stumbled across something that happened to be outside the narrative and realized what happens when you cover something outside of the meta narrative, then my eyes were opened. Oh, this is what's really going on. And there's so many things that you can't get outside of the narrative or you'll get nuked. And now we're learning that the government's actually involved in that, telling Facebook what to do, which is a huge violation of the First Amendment. And all of my media members need to be up in arms about this key pillar of our what makes America America is just being eroded before our eyes. But so many corporate media members have their blinders on. A few of them are waking up to it, but they're scared to say anything. They don't want to lose that big job. But I know a lot of them who are silently walking away from those big jobs. They're disgusted too. They're still not brave enough to stand up and say, this is wrong what our beloved First Amendment is being subjected to. The First Amendment, which is everything to a journalist. It was carved in huge words into the stone side of the building at Newhouse, Syracuse University, where I got my journalism degree. And we journalists were so proud of our First Amendment. And now I'm seeing not a single one of these people stand up and say, this is wrong. And Biden should probably be impeached for trampling over the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. But here we are. I'll keep talking to you about it. It's important to me. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I will see you guys tomorrow.